But we begin tonight with what may very well be shaping up to be the worst cabinet in the history of the United States. Donald Trump's Twitter billionaire clown caravan, many of whom were back on Capitol Hill today peacocking with Republican senators, including Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who last night was on with his former colleague and Trump's favorite TV host, Sean Hannity, attempting to clean up comments he made about women serving in the military.
I also want an opportunity here to clarify comments that have been misconstrued that I somehow don't support women in the military. Some of our greatest warriors, our best warriors out there are women.
Misconstrued, you say? Okay, let's roll the tape of what Hegseth said on camera, literally 1 month ago.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated.
You know, it seems pretty clear to me, personally. This comes after weeks of uncertainty about whether Hegseth can actually garner enough support for confirmation, given the allegations of sexual assault, excessive drinking, financial mismanagement, all of which he denies, plus his plain lack of qualifications. But things, too, do seem to be looking up for the former Fox host, as Senator Joni Ernst, a combat veteran herself, who was previously hesitant to throw her support behind the TV personality, changed her tune yesterday, saying in a statement, quote, "I appreciate Pete Hegseth's responsiveness and respect for the process," adding that they've had encouraging conversations. So why the change of heart? Political reports that it may be as a result of a MAGA pressure campaign, writing, in recent days, allies of Trump adopted an approach that is not novel for the president-elect and his followers, make life extremely uncomfortable for anyone who dares to oppose him. The swarm of MAGA attacks that Senator Ernst has experienced is a warning of what is in store for others who express skepticism of his personnel choices. They also note that allies of Trump are already vowing to mount primary challenges against red state Republican senators who do not support his nominees, a plan that Trump's team is hinting support for. Trump's emotional support billionaire Elon Musk is also reportedly warning Republicans against standing in Trump's way, or his, since, you know, he seems to be co-president. And it's not just Hegseth who benefits from this approach. It's also Trump's other controversial and unqualified nominees like Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, speaking of, yesterday, 77 Nobel laureates signed a letter urging the Senate to reject RFK Jr.'s nomination for HHS Secretary, arguing that he is unfit and would put American public health in jeopardy. It is believed to be the first time in living memory that Nobel Prize winners have united against a presidential cabinet pick. But if you think that will change the minds of any Republican senator, well, you know, I wouldn't hold your breath, especially as some Republicans appear to be already urging FBI Director Christopher Wray to leave his post before the end of his 10-year term, so Trump's pick, Kash Patel, can swoop right on in. Yesterday morning, incoming Senate Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley told Wray in a letter that he has a vote of no confidence in his leadership, writing, "For the good of the country, it's time for you and your deputy to move on to the next chapter in your lives." Later on that day, Grassley posted this pic with Patel, writing, "It's time to shake things up." And if you're thinking to yourself, how could it possibly get any worse? Enter Blake Masters. Remember him? The former venture capitalist turned failed Arizona Senate candidate and noted election denier who, during his campaign in 2022, said he blames black people for gun violence? Yeah, that guy. Sarah Four is reporting that he is under consideration to lead, wait for it, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. At this point, you can't even be surprised. This is what Donald Trump does. He gives jobs to people he likes. Who are the most loyal to him, and will just do whatever he wants, whatever he says. Qualifications be damned. And it's everyone down to his daughter-in-law and wannabe pop star Lara Trump, who this week said she is stepping down as co-chair of the RNC amid speculation that she could be chosen to fill a Senate seat in Florida should Marco Rubio be confirmed as Secretary of State. Because why not? She's family. Joining me now is Doug Jones, former Democratic Senator from Alabama, and Juanita Tolliver, MSNBC political analyst and author of the book, A More Perfect Party, which is awesome, by the way. Y'all should all read it. Senator, All these people are going through, right? I mean, the fear, you can almost smell the fear among Republican senators.
Yeah, I mean, look, really, you said it all. I got nothing. I mean, it's really amazing. And you know, look, this is not new about him threatening senators. I mean, he did this with House members. We've seen that over and over. I had two colleagues, Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, who decided not to run for the U.S. Senate in 2018 because of those threats. You know, so this is nothing new, and I think he'll follow through with them. And he's got senators also doing that bidding for him. So there are a number of senators, and this is just highly, highly unusual. You just have never seen this before in the Senate of the United States.
I mean, the guy who replaced you to I believe, the embarrassment of the state of Alabama, Tommy Tuberville said, we don't need to do advise and consent. Trump, he vetted the nominees for us. He's already done the vetting. What are we here for? Why do we even exist? Why do we even get a check? He said literally they shouldn't do anything because Trump already did it.
Yeah, and we all know that he's not doing it. There is no vetting at all. It is just, as you said, who he likes. But it's a clear you know, what's a little thing like the Constitution and your oath of office? What's that to stand in the way of a Donald Trump? No.
Well, the cherry on top is that Tuberville obviously doesn't know how the Constitution or what his job is. Like, I mean, that's fully in line with what Donald Trump wants. And I think, keep in mind, when he makes that strong arm move, which he has used domestically and in international affairs, remember, withholding aid from Ukraine, which prompted his first impeachment. But that is trademark authoritarian behavior. Yeah. And when these Republican senators backed down, having Joni Ernst, the only one who was remotely vocal,
people talked about her for a while as being more qualified to actually be Secretary of Defense for a minute.
Imagine a woman is more qualified than this former host.
Yeah. And she because I want to ask you, because you talk about strong arm tactics. Yeah. Pete Hegseth is now threatening to sue. His lawyer put out a statement threatening to sue the woman who accused him of sexually assaulting her, of raping her. So now, to add insult to injury, this woman is now facing the threat of a lawsuit if he is denied his profession, his job of choice. If he doesn't get it, he's claiming he's going to sue her.
And even though he probably has no evidence, because remember, she filed the charges with police, the charges were dropped, there might have been an undisclosed payment and an NDA. She has not on record made any statements about this man. So even if he doesn't have any evidence to bring in a lawsuit against her,
what's the defamation?
The reality is, though, what resources does she have to retain attorneys and cover legal fees and make sure that she can protect herself from someone like Hegseth?
Yeah, and the thing is, the idea of a woman now having to deal with this. I mean, it was bad enough Matt Gaetz, who, by the way, does have a new job. He's going to be on OANN. Really? He's going to be a host.
Oh my!
Apparently at the 9 p.m. hour of OANN, right against John Hannity. It should be amazing.
I guess it's an upgrade from the Cameo videos in his car he's been recording.
It is, and it's also actually a relief, I think, for women all across this country that somebody that was accused of what he was accused of, which he denies, will not be in charge of being able to see anyone's FBI file or be in charge of the FBI. But I do want to also talk about RFK Jr., because RFK Jr. is another one that is significantly alarming. 77 Nobel laureates saying this cannot happen. But in addition to that, people in corn country and in rural states like Alabama, they're now having to deal with the fact this is he wants to wage war on corn. He has said his nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services, he was in Decatur, Illinois, in Trump country, in the belly of the agricultural beast, churning out products that he says corn products poison America, rendering its children obese and its citizens chronically ill. To the workers here in those mills, the largest in the world, that's their livelihoods. Just to tell you a few things made with corn syrup, and there is too much high fructose corn syrup in our foods: candy, condiments, chewing gum, cola, shampoo, applesauce, granola bars, peanut butter, fast food items, breakfast cereals, bread, sweetened dairy products, canned food, soft drinks. You know, from having been in the Senate, is a heavily subsidized product.
Oh, yeah.
He's saying that's going to end. How do you think Trump voters are going to feel about that?
Well, I don't know how Trump's going to feel about it, or his Secretary of Agriculture, or all the farmers out there across America that supported him. I think that they are going to be up in arms about this. You know, Kennedy's an interesting pick here because, on the one hand, he is totally unqualified, has all these bizarre theories, Nobel laureates coming out against him. The list goes on and on and on. But here's the thing, Joy. If he is not confirmed, don't you believe he will end up at the White House in charge of health, doing all of this, and won't have Congress to answer for, won't have those hearings, won't have the Democrats won't have the ability to really call him before Congress. So it's a mixed bag when turning him down, because oversight in Congress is important.
Yeah.
And, the guy's just, he should not be there. But at the same time, I don't want a de facto health czar
That's a good point.
in the White House.
And by the way, if he doesn't get through, Trump is just going to nominate Dr. Phil.
I mean, he has
like
a roster of unqualified clowns waiting for him. But I think the other thing about this letter from the Nobel laureates, it highlights one clear friction within our country. Who decides who is a trusted source?
Right.
Who decides what the truth is? And I think we've had an explicit breakdown over what is real and what is not, which ultimately alters the fiber of whatever social construct is undergirding this democratic experience in America.
And that's a great point. And I think it is sort of shocking. We're going to talk about this later on with Senator Warren, the extent to which a lot of Americans have just ceded the answer to that to whatever
100%.
billionaire they like.
100%.
Right?
And to your point, Senator, about the farmers impacted by potential rollbacks of subsidies on corn, even if that happens and they are hit, there is no guarantee that they will point to Trump as the blame for that.
And in fact, I would submit that they will not. And the reason they will not is because the infrastructure that is out there by Republicans to counter the argument
Fox,
and to counter that.
Twitter,
you name it. It is TikTok. It is so subtle and so widespread that it is hard to just rattle off these things. So I think that you're right. The farm bureaus across the country will continue to support because all they will be hearing is, this is good for you, and this is good for America, and we've got to do it.
Or all they'll be hearing is, the reason you're suffering, it's still the trans kids.
That's right.
It's still the immigrants. They'll just keep pointing, and they have this super infrastructure on social media and Fox, et cetera, that will just keep telling these people it's black people, it's brown people, it's women who won't have babies. It's not us.
I feel like Lawrence Fishburne in that in School Days. Wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up. And I think that is something that, like, the core of understanding reality is education. The core of understanding and making sense of what you're being fed every day is education. How else are you going to differentiate the lies from the truth? How else are you going to understand the core source of things? And that is what's missing. I keep coming back to it because it is key to our future as a people.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it is that you've now, the big change since the Tea Party movement is that you now have United States senators who Tommy Tuberville has demonstrated he didn't know what the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act were.
Right.
There you
that
go.
People who are coming in on feels, they want him because he's a football coach, not because he knows anything.
Vibes, the vibes are
It's
good.
vibes. And so that you're seeing a political party sort of descend into whatever's hot on social media. That's what the voters want. And they're not expecting Marjorie Taylor Greene to deliver anything, or Lawrence Boebert to do anything, or Tommy Tuberville to do anything other than keep the vibes going.
And support Donald Trump.
And
in
just
this
support
particular
Trump, no matter
in
what.
this case. I mean, we've lost some outstanding middle-of-the-road senators who really worked across the aisle doing a lot of great things over the years, from 2018, 2020, 2022, and now. And they're being replaced. The Senate, unfortunately, to some extent, is becoming a lot like the House.
How visceral is the fear of being primary? Because it does seem you have proven there is life after being a senator. It's not as if it's the end of the world. Mitt Romney has said this, but these senators seem to be so terrified that they will not be in their seat, that someone like Joni Ernst, who I respect her service, is literally terrified, it seems, of
first of all,
Elon Musk and Trump.
let me come to Senator Ernst's defense a little bit. I don't think she has completely flipped like so many people have said. She's going to let this play out. Remember, she said, I respect him to go through this process. She knows that hearing is going to be an ugly hearing for this guy. Okay? And Democrats will be loaded. And it's not just the he said, she said. It is the mismanagement of funds at veterans organizations. It is hurting veterans. It's doing all of those things. So I really think she is letting this process play out, which, quite frankly, I think is the way
it's the right
to do this. And Democrats are allowing this to play out, too. You notice they're being They're being very coy about a lot of this.
Because it's not their job to convince people of what we all see.
That's right.
Yeah, and they don't have
That's the
numbers.
reality.
In the end, this is Republicans' game. Nobody, look, I'm going to look into the camera and tell y'all, if you don't like anything that happens that's going on in this country, at least in the next 2 years, Democrats are not involved. They are not in power anywhere, from the courts all the way to the White House. This is on Republicans. If you don't like it, you need to look at them. Former Senator Doug Jones and Juanita Tolliver, thank you both very much. Up next, Trump has somehow reached new lows in his mockery of other countries, and leaders like Canada's Justin Trudeau are going to have to learn how to deal with him. From leaders at home and abroad in terms of bending the knee or standing up to the once and future president. Por ejemplo, in New York, Mayor Eric Adams is showing a real profile in courage by capitulating to Trump and closing shelters for asylum seekers before Trump is even in office. It's a sharp contrast to California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's working to finish a new port of entry as Trump threatens a border crackdown. Internationally, you have the Bahamas and Mexico among the countries pushing back and telling Trump they want no part in trafficking humans moved from what will likely be Trump and Homan's concentration camps in the southern U.S., while countries like Canada and France are taking a different approach and attempting to befriend Trump by visiting or offering visits to the next president. It's two competing approaches, but you only get to keep your dignity with one of them. And the irony of it is that both of those choices ultimately render the same result. The truth is, no matter how nice or how cordial, you'll never have a seat at Trump's table. Take Canada, whose young Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, decided to make the trip to Mar-a-Lago and cozy up to Trump, only to wake up this morning to the former president calling Trudeau the governor of America's 51st state in a wee hours social media post. Joining me now is Ed Luce, U.S. chief columnist for the Financial Times, and someone I have long wanted to get on this show. So great to finally get to meet you in person. Let's talk about Mexico's response to Donald Trump's threats of tariff wars and flooding them with immigrants who he wants to deport, and Canada's softer approach, which is let's be friends, and then being humiliated, Justin Trudeau.
It's a tale of two different leaders. I mean, you have Trudeau going to Mar-a-Lago straight away after this 25% tariff threat was issued by Trump, cap in hand, as it were, in a kind of posture of submission, although, of course, the Canadians would push back on that. And Claudia Sheinbaum from Mexico issuing a very correct but icily sort of phrased rebuttal of some of Trump's points, and essentially doing the opposite of what Trudeau did, not bending the knee. And I guess it's partly a difference between characters, but Sheinbaum, of course, has just recently been inaugurated. She's in the first flush of a strongly elected presidency. Trudeau is dying a political death by 1,000 cuts. He faces an election next year, which his Liberal Party is almost certain to lose. And Trump smells weakness and exploits weakness. And Trudeau is kind of, nowadays, weakness personified.
So are you saying that there, and I should add that the Bahamas also, the CARICOM folks are like, we're not doing this with you, so don't try to send, Turks and Caicos is not open for business, right? So and the Bahamas is saying we're not either. But if you do look at the way Latin America is sort of unfolding, to the south of us, we've got a lot of instability. You've got Milei in Argentina, you've got Maduro, obviously, in Venezuela. Trump has now got to deal with those two. But if Canada, for instance, elects a Trump-like figure, then what for the region?
I think the region's going to see a lot more turmoil in Trump's second term and a lot more Trump sort of upfrontism in the next time round than we saw in the first term. I mean, he was kind of distracted last time round. We also have Marco Rubio. And Rubio, you know, is of Cuban origin, and he has sort of quite, I won't say Bolivarian ambitions, but he sees himself as a big player in the hemisphere.
And a future president.
And as a future president. So he's going to try and sort of end Maduro in Venezuela. I suspect he'll want, you know, a maximum pressure thing. Trump will decide, and Rubio will agree vigorously with whatever Trump decides.
Right, that's what I was wondering, because Donald Trump seems to admire Maduro. He seems to admire his strongman tactics, and he keeps on saying that the lowest crime rate in the world is Venezuela. And yet, a lot of the people that he would like to very quickly deport, including in New York, are Venezuelan. So he said that Venezuela is a target in terms of people who are here in this country. So he's negative toward Venezuelans, but he seems to really like the leadership in Venezuela.
He does. I mean, I think Venezuela, Maduro is done, or in Trump's version, what Trump would like to do, which is empty the asylums and then leave them to claim asylum. I think he sort of confuses asylums quite a bit, and empty the country of murderers and crooks and gangs, and then they turn up, according to Trump, in places like Aurora, Colorado, which is where he's going to allegedly focus the first wave of deportations, places like that.
Let's talk about the wider world. I mean, you've got Bibi Netanyahu going on trial in his corruption trial very soon, but also feeling very bullish on himself, you know, with Syria, the big change in government there, and they're sort of thumping their chest, and he's saying, you know, it was because of Israel's actions. But he's now free to annex the West Bank, to annex Gaza, to do whatever he wants. He seems free there. The Saudis seem free to act. China, you know, seem free. It seems like the freedom of people with autocratic tendencies is going to increase over the next couple of years.
It's a jungle out there, and that's where Trump feels comfortable. I mean, in terms of Netanyahu and his sort of free sort of road ahead for him, Iran is a sitting duck, and for any Israeli prime minister, Iran is the ultimate existential problem, its nuclear program. Iran's lost most of its missile defenses, most of its ability to produce missiles. It's lost all its proxies in Hezbollah, Hamas, most of its proxies. And now, of course, its greatest Middle Eastern ally in Assad, Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So right now, the temptation for Netanyahu to go for Iran and to go for its nuclear program is going to be overwhelming. And as you remember from Trump's first term, Trump is not into boots on the ground, but he is into drone attacks and stuff like that. And he took out Iran's most senior military figure, Qasem Soleimani. So watch the Iranian space. That's very, very vulnerable. It's extremely exposed right now.
And as is everything. It feels like the whole world is just one big game of whack-a-mole, and the person doing the whack-a-mole is got tiny little fingers, and he's in Doral getting money, you know, from senators. It's strange. Ed Luce, a pleasure. Thank you very much. And coming up, the latest on the United Healthcare CEO shooting suspect and the rights selected. Today, the 26-year-old suspect in the killing of the United Healthcare CEO was back in a Pennsylvania courtroom for an extradition hearing to determine when he'll be brought back to New York to face charges, including second-degree murder. The case has brought out a clear division in the reaction among those on the right. You see, when popular conservative pundits like Ben Shapiro and anti-woman zealot Matt Walsh tried to attack, quote, evil liberals for celebrating the murder of a CEO, they were met with backlash from some of their own supporters who defended the violence. Because the truth is, those on the right don't necessarily abhor violence if it's against someone they don't like Black Lives Matter activists or pro-Palestinian protesters, undocumented immigrants, or the homeless. That's why we see them get behind people like Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot and killed 2 BLM protesters, or George Zimmerman, who shot and killed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin and turned them into cause celebs. Just look at how, in nearly the same breath, Fox's Laura Ingraham speaks about the 26-year-old United Healthcare suspect and Daniel Penny, who was just acquitted yesterday in the subway chokehold death of 30-year-old homeless man Jordan Neely.
Bag people, which I was sent in the commercial break earlier, crazy. Like, he's cute, and people celebrating this. This is a sickness. Honestly, it's so disappointing, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And up next, the other big news out of New York, Daniel Penny. A lot of people think he's a hero, and tonight he's not guilty. My take next.
Wow. Joining me now is Jason Johnson, professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University and host of the podcast A Word with Jason Johnson. And vive la différence, Jason.
We just witnessed a murder of irony.
Yes.
That was a murder right there.
Dead.
Irony is officially dead. Under any and all circumstances. We should not be surprised in this country that just reelected Donald Trump.
And I mean, the reality is, you know, if you go back to the Trayvon Martin case, you can go back before that. You can go back to the justification for lynching among conservatives, whether the conservatives wearing the D uniform or the R uniform. Conservatism itself has justified violence. January 6th, burning down Tulsa and Wilmington, overthrowing the government there. If it's violence for the purposes they want, They're cool with it.
If the victim is somebody that I don't like, or the victim is someone who they feel deserves it, then a lot of times people are willing to justify violence. It's an unfortunate thing. It's a very American thing, right? I mean, we worship vigilante violence. We worship action heroes. We worship Charles Bronson and all these people who take it into their own hands. Al Capone, you know, criminals and everything else like that. I think the sad part about this, frankly, is that I am not going to pretend that in a country that's been started and operated off of violence, that violence doesn't sometimes solve things. But the man who was killed is a cog in a machine. It's not going to change anything about how healthcare operates in this country. And so you have killed a man, harmed his family, and the machine's going to keep going.
Yeah.
And so it didn't really accomplish anything.
And the thing that's so kind of wild about it is this Luigi Mangione. You know, he's like sort of now everywhere. You know, there's people celebrating him, all along saying, "Don't catch him," all that sort of thing. You know, he did have his arraignment today, and he stood up and yelled something about, you know, this is just, it's unfair, it's not right, yada yada yada. He was walking. There he goes, walking in today. He yelled something about. There he goes. Turning himself into sort of a folk hero, right, and leaning into that. He's probably richer than the guy that he killed. His family, he has generational wealth.
Yes.
So he probably was wealthier than the CEO that he killed.
Yes, yes. This is Lex Luthor killing a stormtrooper, right? Like he and here's the thing. The humanity of this is that no matter how much money you have, you can still be taken advantage of by our unfair healthcare system.
That's right.
All the money in the world can't fix a broken back. All the money in the world can't save your grandmother. That's where my empathy comes through.
Sure.
But the attitude that, well, if I can't get things my way, or if I am in pain, that singular violence is the way to go, is a level of privilege that the vast majority of people in America suffering can't exact.
And a lot of the people who are falling in love with Luigi Mangione are opposed to regulating the insurance companies.
Yes.
That is how you could actually stop them from taking advantage of us. I think left and right, we agree. The system is broken. Insurance companies are bilking us. United Healthcare is that big for a reason. They're being sued for a reason. But like you said, they'll just replace him with another CEO and keep doing it to you. But regulation would actually fix it. They're against that.
They're against regulation because people don't want to understand that part. They want the catharsis of this one-man action that will supposedly. It's like everyone talking about the anesthesiologist a week ago, like, oh, that changed because of what happened. Probably not. That was a much more complex situation. If there was a general level of understanding about healthcare, if we actually have members of Congress who would engage healthcare as an actual issue, not as just a political ploy to be bounced back and forth, you wouldn't have these kinds of problems. But Joy, this is my real concern. This is very real for you and me and everybody else who does anything. This person worked alone. I sincerely believe he very likely worked alone.
Sure.
And any crazy person who views somebody as the genesis of all their problems can go out and do this. And that's what happens when you have a country that worships violence and a country where you don't regulate guns.
Right, exactly.
Because if you couldn't get access to guns, this probably doesn't happen.
Well, and this is the same approach that is taken by the right when it comes to gun violence. They're like, oh, it's very sad that 3-year-olds were killed, but we're not. The answer would be regulating guns, but we're not willing to do that. And so there's an unwillingness to do any of the structural things that would actually make it better. And in fact, I was saying the other day, I said it on my TikTok, I said it on this show, the majority of the voters in this country just elected to run America like United Healthcare.
Yeah.
This country will now be run the same way United Healthcare is. Vicious cost cutting, merciless cost cutting, cutting people's benefits, cutting veterans' benefits, refusing care, taking away Obamacare. That is United Healthcare.
And limiting people's ability to sue and pursue government regulation to stop the problems. Like literally people just said, well, I want more of this. And again, the problem is I have a lot of empathy for everybody on all sides in this situation. I've had to take care of people who are suffering medically, but this ain't the answer. And I honestly wish, rather than the right-wing people screaming and yelling and engaging in ridiculous murders of irony and everything else like that, I really wish that members of Congress would stand up and say, hey, you know what, right and left, either because we're concerned about our own safety or the safety of American people, let's do something about this.
Yeah, it would be nice, right?
That'd be a nice Christmas
That would
gift.
be so normal. That's in America, Jason. Come on. We don't do that. Jason Johnson, thank you very much. We're Gotham, and the Joker is in charge. That's just real talk. Coming up next, Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us to talk about how the ultra-rich have entirely eaten up, gobbled up. Fifth, a majority of voters elected a billionaire under the guise of populism. It's fair to say that Americans' wealthiest individuals secured the most powerful positions and have effectively won the battle for the 21st century. They are set to usher in the most unregulated, pro-corporation era since the Gilded Age. Trump won in large part because of another billionaire, Elon Musk, who turned a social media platform into a right-wing juggernaut of lies and disinformation. While Musk was taking over social media, Leonard Leo celebrated the Federalist Society's takeover of the American judicial system, with his 6 hand-selected Supreme Court justices serving as his crowning jewels. Those justices are delivering victory after victory for large corporations, backed by other billionaires like Charles Koch, who helped gut federal regulations, leaving Americans prey to pollution, financial abuse, and gun violence. The super rich at this point are so powerful. They will make up the majority of this upcoming administration. And they are touting a mandate to cut taxes for themselves while attacking things that protect the rest of us, such as unions, public education, and health care. Joining me now is a senator really intending to stand in the way, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. Senator, it's so good to see you.
It's so good to be here with you.
Is it too dark to say that the billionaires ultimately won?
I'm not going to give them one yet. I think they certainly are in the winning position. I think they got a ton of power. But you got to remember, there's a lot that still goes on down in the gears. So just today, we actually had a victory. Let's stop and do a smile for a minute. These don't come so often. So you know how there are all these grocery stores out there, and the whole idea is they will compete with each other and keep the prices low. We've known for a long time. In fact, there are only 2.
Yeah.
I get that there are a lot of names. There's, there's Shaw's and there's Star and there's Ralph's and there's Vaughn's and they're just 2 companies that own the 2.
All of them.
And the 2 said, let's merge, right? What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Yes, we will be a unit company and not have to do nasty things like compete with each other on prices in these different markets. The FTC took them to court, said, no, you can't do that. And today, this very day, the FTC won. Go Lena Khan.
Okay.
Go forces that say we're going to keep some competition in this economy. I celebrate that partly to remind everybody why it matters, because blocking that merger means at least we still have some competition. And that's really important. And also to remind you, it is possible to do it. And these regulatory agencies already have law. We don't have to pass new laws. We just have to get people into those places who have the courage. FTC has shown they can do it. Let's keep supporting them.
We've been talking a lot about this Luigi Mangione, the case about the United Healthcare CEO. People are very angry at United Healthcare, I think for good reason, denying care, and the whole system. And we were just talking in the previous block, killing a CEO is not the way you change. You have to regulate them, right? And so we've got attempts to try to rein in some of these big businesses. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was your creation. The Trump administration wants to get rid of it. That is like protecting people from like credit card fraud. What happens if that goes away?
So look, terrible for individuals, but stop and think overall about the social contract. Part of the deal in how we've kept this democracy, this economy, this country on a fairly steady path for more than 200 years has been that those at the top pay a little more in taxes, are a little less rich than they otherwise might be, and everybody else at least gets a chance. And what happens when you turn this into the billionaires run it all is they get the opportunity to squeeze every last penny. And look, we'll say it over and over. Violence is never the answer. This guy gets a trial who's allegedly killed the CEO of United Health. But you can only push people so far. And then they start to take matters into their own hands. We need regulation, in part, to rein those guys in. And you know where this is coming big time ahead of us is on taxes. That the big boys, just like you said, their plan is to rush through this tax plan right at the beginning of 2025, give themselves a bunch more tax breaks, and then put the real burden of running this country on ordinary, hard-working
that will pay the tariff. That will pay the tariff. They're going to pay, and it's paying at the bottom.
They can pay for it in taxes.
Absolutely.
But the whole point is shove the cost somewhere else
onto the poor people and make them subsidize the rich.
One more way for billionaires to pick the pockets.
One of the billionaires, Dr. Oz, I don't know if he's a billionaire or not, but he's very rich. He owns a lot of United Healthcare stock, and he is about to be able to be in charge of Medicare itself. And there is a lot of fear that his first step will be to try to privatize it and make Medicare Advantage everyone's health plan.
So think about what that means. Dr. Oz owns more than $500,000 in stock in the private version of Medicare. If the public version of Medicare, the one that everybody counts on, collapses, then Dr. Oz gets richer. And that is why Dr. Oz cannot have the job of being in charge of Medicare. He makes money if Medicare fails. And that kind of conflict right at the heart of running a system that protects every senior in this country.
Yeah.
That is fundamentally wrong, and we got to put a stop.
So this is the reason that I started out the way I did, because you've got Elon Musk, who has billions and billions in government contracts, now having a say in who gets government contracts.
Exactly.
He could say Starlink gets everything, NASA goes away, I get richer. Ramaswamy, who's gotten federal subsidies for his drug companies, can now be in charge of saying, you know what I think is not waste, fraud, and abuse? My stuff. The things that I get. You know,
only those other guys.
Only the other guys. All the crypto people that are now, and there's a senator, there's a crypto guy who beat Sherrod Brown.
Right.
He's now like, line it up. I can like weigh in on legislation that makes crypto king, and now I get money. There's no, people are flying down to Doral to do their Republican retreat to pay Donald Trump so that he gets money. It's literally just rich people sharing money among themselves. Where do regular people, even Trump voters, fit into that?
You know, that's the thing. The Trump voters don't fit in here at all. Ordinary folks don't fit in here at all. So where this one, I think, is going to start to hit is when all those promises that Donald Trump made, remember how he promised that he's going to cut credit card interest rates down to 10%?
No tax on tips. He
Let's see
promised
it.
that.
No tax on tips, right? No tax on Social Security.
That's what he said.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Because one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to deliver on those promises, which means he's going to have the courage to stand up to those billionaires, or he's just pitching in with the billionaires, and he's going to say to all of those people who counted on him, all those people who voted, nope, you don't really matter.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's all framed up now. It's no longer, oh, we're in the campaign and he can promise this to this group and that to that group. And there were a lot of us, you included, who kept saying, but wait a minute, you can't do both of those things at the same time. We are now coming to the part of the world where you literally can't do both of those things at the same time.
Right.
And Trump is going to have to make a choice.
Yeah.
And he's either going to deliver on some of those promises for people, or he's just handing this whole thing over to the billionaires in return for a nice price.
The record ain't good. He promised steel jobs would never go away. They went away. There was a decrease in manufacturing jobs. He did not do well in terms of creating jobs. He's made a lot of promises now. There are some people in the U.S. steel unions that are upset that he seems to be against Nippon Steel taking over U.S. Steel. But then you had some who literally spoke at Trump rallies that said, we wanted the takeover because we want the jobs. It's like he can't please both parts of his base. If veterans' benefits get cut, which is on Ramaswamy's list, he's got to answer to veterans who overwhelmingly supported him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, listen, when you talk about who he has to answer to, remember, more than 70% of America, and that includes Democrats, Republicans, Independents, want to see the rich pay, listen for the word, more in taxes. Not less, not the same, more in taxes. So the big question is for Donald Trump, who are you out there for? Who are you going to deliver for? But here's the one for me, and I think for all the rest of us, is to say, if you don't deliver for people the way you promised, then our job is to make sure you're held accountable. Our job is to wrap that around your neck and make you wear it every single day.
This is why we love to talk with Senator Elizabeth Warren, because she makes it plain, makes it simple, and lets you